From KPRC Channel 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
And this is Newsmakers Extra. I've got Dr. Jeffrey Hoffman, who is the director of the Immigration Clinic at the University of Houston Law Center. Thank you for being here. We were talking on our program about all the different issues that relate to immigration, and I find it amazing how many layers there are. You were talking about one particular part of the immigration law that is something that we probably need to know more about.
Well, so as we were discussing, the executive order that was rolled out on January 25th from President Trump related to basing the 212F, the policy on 212F. Mm-hmm. And what 212F is a part of the Immigration and Nationality Act that gives the president broad power. So it basically says that the president can, by proclamation, make a decision about aliens or classes of aliens that are, quote unquote, detrimental to the interests of the U.S. That's mm-hmm. the language of the statute. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so the president and also the Department of Justice in their litigation in the Ninth Circuit, which your previous panel talked about, the president is taking the position that that is carte blanche to do whatever the president wants in terms of keeping any aliens or classes of aliens out. The problem is that that argument ignores a long line of jurisprudence, a long line of authority that says that no, the president, no matter what it says in a statute, the president is always limited by what? The Constitution. And so it's very clear that if the Constitution, for example, equal protection, due process, establishment clause, which is First Amendment, or another part of the Immigration Nationality Act conflicts with 212F, then that limits the president's power. And that's exactly what the Ninth Circuit found.
Do you think that this is ever going to be solved? I mean, it is a multi-layered issue mm-hmm. that has all kind of, we talk about the refugees. I mean, his order was about refugees coming in, and that number has been dropped and raised.
The number was dropped to 50,000 as a cap, for one thing, in the executive order. But more troublingly, and this is something the panel didn't get to, more troublingly, that there was a 120-day suspension of the U.S. refugee admissions program, the USRAP. So that means that no refugees, I just want to make clear, that means no refugees are coming into our country, zero, for 120 days, okay? So what's going to happen to those people? I mean, are they going to be in danger? Are they going to?
The president has said America first. You know, those people, and he ran on that, and people elected him that, and he said America first. And so a lot of people say, well, hey, you know, I'm sorry about them, but it's all about me.
Well, if the president's running on a campaign of American first, I would say, what about the Constitution first? What about the Constitution first? Because the Constitution is what is the bedrock of America. And so, you know, you can't have, and I understand, and again, I acknowledge 212F, which gives broad powers mm-hmm. by proclamation to the president. At the same time, we have to understand that our country has to respect the rights of immigrants as well as citizens. And also, I would point out that we are in violation of our international obligations and statutes that say we cannot discriminate on the basis of religion.
Okay, so the person who's looking at this and saying, okay, Constitution, how is a Constitution that's based on the United States of America apply to somebody who's not even in our country, who's trying to get into our country? Okay. Why should this Constitution apply to them? They're not even part of our country at all.
And you've put your finger on a very important point. It's called the standing issue. So that's, in the law, we have something called standing, and there's an issue about, well, who has standing to sue? Because if they're outside the country, do they have full constitutional rights? And you're exactly right. They have very limited constitutional rights. But again, as we saw in the Ninth Circuit case, the court, Judge Robart, who's a district judge in Seattle, what he said is, I'm going to look at the citizens who are here and the schools, the universities, mm-hmm. and Microsoft and Amazon and et cetera, and Google. I'm going to look at them as basically having proprietary or parens patriae standing. In other words, by keeping out refugees and people who have valid visas, again, remember, these are people who have already been granted the right to come, mm-hmm. okay? By keeping those people out, who is being harmed? Well, the citizens of Washington are being harmed. The citizens of Minnesota are being harmed.
Well, now
the citizens. So there is standing on behalf of people who are here because those entities are losing out.
And as we're taping this, the president is, there's some word from Washington, D.C. that the president will be rewriting an order that will give standing to those people who have been already here and have been outside the country and coming back in. Will that solve it?
And that's a very good point. And I think it's very telling that during, and I listened to the whole oral argument because that's part of my research. It's part of what I do. But I listened to the whole oral argument, both at the district court and at the Ninth Circuit, and I found it very telling that the Department of Justice attorney for President Trump's position, basically at the very end, he said, "I don't think that I'm convincing you." That's what he said to the circuit judges. He said, "So I would like to propose a compromise." So already during that oral argument, I think there was an acknowledgement on behalf of the Department of Justice that, wait a minute, something's not quite right with the executive order. It needs to be scaled back.
Okay, I want to touch on one other thing on this extra segment. One has to do with the visa waiver program.
Visa waiver.
Where it looks like that there are just as many people, we're talking about refugees coming in, a lot of people come into our country in that process and maybe overstay their visas. Isn't that a big problem, or as big a problem in some ways?
Well, the visa waiver is from specific countries, primarily European countries, where people basically are not required to go through the interview process.
Yeah, I got that.
And that has been changed now with the executive order, because there's a paragraph in that executive order that says basically that everybody has to do an interview and go through extreme vetting. So that's what I would say about the visa waiver program.
Is that in abeyance right now too, while this whole thing, or is that a part that is being in
I don't believe that part is in abeyance. So not all parts of that's a very good point as well. Not all parts of the executive order are held in abeyance, only certain sections.
Well, it seems to me that I made a lot of very good points this morning, and I'm glad that you're here to answer.
You always do. You always do.
Thank you, Jeff. Always good to see you. Thank you for what you do on behalf of those who otherwise might not have a voice. Appreciate it. There's something to be gained by all of that. Thank you. This is Houston Newsmakers Extra.